My name is Cindy Winter, and I was 17 years old when my life ended without me dying. I didn't know it that night. None of us did. To everyone else, it was just another loud Saturday family dinner, the kind my parents loved, because it made us look perfect from the outside. Long table, too much food, too many people talking over one another. Grandparents, aunts, cousins, neighbors who just stopped by. My mother thrived on that chaos. She floated through the room with a glass of wine, laughing too loudly, telling anyone who would listen how close our family was, how proud she was of her kids. My father manned the grill in the backyard, apron-stained chest puffed out like he was hosting a cookout commercial. My older brother Lucas complained the whole time as he helped drag folding chairs from the garage. And then there was Claire, my adopted sister. My parents brought Claire home when she was 8 because they'd always wanted a daughter. And somehow the universe decided to give them another one anyway, me, 3 years later. But Claire was the miracle, the one they chose, the one who needed saving. I never resented her. I helped her with homework, taught her how to ride a bike, defended her when kids whispered about her being adopted. She was my sister. That's all she ever was to me. That night, though, something was off. Claire barely touched her food. She kept twisting her fingers together, staring down at her plate. I remember glancing at her and thinking she might be sick or nervous about something teenage and harmless. I never imagined what was coming. After dinner, everyone crowded into the living room. Plates stacked, drinks refilled. Someone turned the TV down. That's when Claire stood up. Her chair scraped against the floor, sharp and loud. The room slowly quieted. She was shaking. Actually shaking. And when she spoke, her voice cracked like thin ice. I need to tell everyone something. My stomach tightened for reasons I still can't explain. She took a breath, then another. Her eyes lifted and locked onto mine. Cindy, she said. The way she said my name didn't register at first. It sounded wrong, heavy. She forced me. The words didn't land. They hovered in the air, meaningless. I remember thinking I misheard her, that maybe she meant someone else, that this was some kind of mistake. Then she added, I'm pregnant. Everything exploded at once. My father crossed the room in seconds. I didn't even have time to stand up before his fist connected with my face. White light burst behind my eyes. I hit the floor hard, my ears, ringing teeth, buzzing, like electricity was running through them. My mother screamed like someone had died. Lucas stood frozen, then started shaking his head. What the hell is wrong with you? He shouted. You're disgusting. I tried to speak. I tried to say her name, to say she was lying. The next hit came before I could finish. You sick bitch, my father yelled. You brought shame to this family. Claire collapsed into my mother's arms, sobbing, trembling, whispering that she was scared. My aunt wrapped her in a hug, whispering, You're safe now, sweetheart. Lucas spat near my shoe. Get out, he snarled. You don't deserve to breathe the same air as us. I looked around the room. Faces I'd known my whole life. Not one of them looked at me like family anymore. Just like a disease. She's lying, I said, my voice cracking. I swear on my life. No one cared. My mother screamed, Don't even say her name. Don't talk to her. Someone called the police. By the time they arrived, I was sitting on the porch, blood dripping from my mouth onto the concrete. When the officer asked my father if I was the suspect, he nodded without even looking at me. They didn't cuff me roughly. They could see I was just a kid. But riding in the back of that car, sirens echoing, felt like being buried alive. They questioned me through the night. There was no evidence, no proof. By morning, they let me go. When I came home, my belongings were piled on the lawn. Get out, my father said calmly. You're done here. That night, my phone rang. It was Daniel, my boyfriend. I believe you, he whispered through tears. But my parents, they won't let me see you. They think it's true. I begged him not to leave. I'm sorry, he sobbed. I can't lose them. The line went dead. I sat in my car behind a gas station 2 towns over, staring at the rain sliding down the windshield, and realized something simple and final. No one was coming to save me. My family hadn't just kicked me out. They erased me. I spent that first night in my car, parked behind a gas station 2 towns away. The kind with flickering fluorescent lights and a bathroom door that never really locked. Rain tapped against the cracked windshield in uneven rhythms, and every time headlights swept past my body stiffened. I kept thinking it was my father's truck, that he'd found me and decided to finish what he started. But no one came. By morning, my neck ached from sleeping upright, my face throbbed, where his fist had landed, and my mouth tasted like old blood and cheap coffee from the vending machine inside the gas station. The sun came up without ceremony. Just another day for the world, even though mine had already ended. I didn't go back to town. I couldn't. Everywhere I turned, I imagined people whispering, pointing, deciding who I was without ever asking me. I drove aimlessly, stopping only when the gas light blinked red. That was how I ended up in a place called Maplewood, a town small enough to disappear into, but big enough to survive in if you kept your head down. I pulled into a half-empty parking lot behind a strip of aging storefronts and sat there until my hands stopped shaking. Hunger hit me in waves. I'd been living off chips and warm soda for days, rationing what little cash I had left. Across the street, a diner window had a crooked "Help Wanted" sign taped to the glass. I stood on the sidewalk staring at it for a long time, arguing with myself. Pride versus desperation. Fear versus the need to eat. Eventually, desperation won. The bell above the door jingled when I stepped inside. The smell of grease and burnt coffee wrapped around me instantly. A man with broad shoulders and a gray beard stood behind the counter, wiping his hands on a rag. His face was lined tired, the kind of tired that comes from decades of early mornings. "Can I help you?" he asked, voice rough, not unkind. I saw the sign, I said, my voice coming out quieter than I expected. "I can wash dishes. Anything." He looked me over slowly, mud on my shoes, wrinkled clothes bruises I hadn't bothered to hide. "You ever worked in a kitchen?" he asked. "No, sir," he grunted. "You look hungry." "I'm fine," I lied. He sighed, nodded toward the back. "Name's Andy. Sink's back there. You start now, you eat after. No questions, no paperwork, no suspicion, just work." The kitchen was loud, hot, and relentless. I scrubbed plates until my fingers burned grease, soaking into my skin, no matter how hard I washed. When Andy slid a half-eaten burger and cold fries toward me at the end of the shift, I nearly cried. I devoured it without shame, chewing too fast, barely tasting it. When closing time came, I tried to thank him and said I'd find somewhere to sleep. Andy wiped the counter and jerked his chin upward. "Room upstairs. Ain't pretty. Got a bed and a lock. You work it off." That room was 10 feet across at most. Stained mattress, flickering bulb, wallpaper peeling at the corners. It was the most beautiful place I'd seen in weeks. I collapsed on the bed and slept for 14 hours straight. Days blurred into each other. Wash dishes, eat, sleep, repeat. Andy didn't talk much, but sometimes he'd grunt, "Good job," and those 2 words meant more than anything my family had ever said to me. He didn't know my story, and for the first time, that felt like a gift. 2 weeks in, I came downstairs late one night to lock up and found Andy reading the newspaper at the counter. "Kid," he said without looking up, "what's your story?" My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "Customer today," he said. "Trucker passing through. Said he saw your picture in a paper a couple towns over. Some family thing." The room tilted. "It's not what it looks like," I rushed out. "It's a lie. My sister. My adopted sister, she—" Andy raised a hand. "I don't care." I blinked. "You don't—" "Everybody's got a story," he said, folding the paper. "You're here. You work. That's what matters." That night, sitting on the edge of that narrow bed, it hit me how strange it was that a stranger could give me what my own family never did a chance. A few days later, curiosity got the better of me. I called home. My mother answered on the 3rd ring. "Mom," I whispered, "it's me. I just wanted you to know I'm okay. I found a job." "Don't call here again," she said, her voice cracking. "Your father doesn't want your name spoken in this house." The line went dead. That was the last time I tried. Weeks turned into months. Andy taught me how to fix small things around the diner. Leaky pipes, clogged vents, broken thermostats. Learn to fix things, he'd say. It's how you survive. One night I searched my sister's name online. Photos of baby showers, smiling faces, my mother beaming beside her like nothing had ever happened. My stomach twisted so hard I had to close the laptop. That was the night something inside me shut down. I wasn't Cindy anymore, not the girl they buried. I just didn't know what I was becoming yet. After that night, something in me went quiet. Not healed, not calm, just switched off. I stopped checking my phone for missed calls that were never going to come. I stopped wondering if my mother would wake up one morning and realize she'd thrown away her daughter without ever asking a single question. I stopped imagining my brother showing up at the diner, awkward and ashamed, ready to admit he'd been wrong. Hope, I learned, was heavier than grief, and it was hope that was slowing me down. So I let it die. I poured everything I had into work. I showed up before sunrise and stayed long after the last customer left. I scrubbed floors until my back screamed fix things no one else wanted to touch and never complained. Andy noticed. He always did. One afternoon, I was kneeling behind the counter, arm buried elbow deep in a clogged drain, when Andy leaned over and said, "You ever think about learning this stuff for real?" I wiped sweat from my forehead and looked up at him. "What do you mean? Plumbing, heating, cooling, air systems?" He shrugged. "People always need heat or cold. That kind of skill feeds you forever." The way he said it stuck. Feeds you forever. I was tired of just surviving. I wanted something solid, something no one could rip away with a lie. A week later, Andy slid a flyer across the counter. Community college, night classes, HVAC certification. "You pay what you can," he said. "I'll cover the rest until you're on your feet." I stared at that piece of paper for a long time. No one had ever invested in me like that. Not my parents. Not my family. A man who barely knew me was betting on my future when the people who made me couldn't be bothered to hear me speak. I signed up the next day. The months that followed were brutal. 10-hour shifts at the diner, then a bus ride to night school. Fighting sleep through lectures about compressors and coils. I studied on my breaks, scribbled notes on napkins, replayed lessons in my head while scrubbing pans. Every time I fixed something and felt cold air pour out of a vent, it felt like proof. Proof that I could take something broken and make it work again. Andy pushed me hard. "Don't just get good," he'd say. "Get so good they can't ignore you." When I earned my GED, I was already halfway through the program. I started doing small repair jobs on the side. Andy's placed the diner a few regular customers. When my certificate came in the mail, Andy hung it in the hallway like it was his own kid's diploma. "Not bad for a runaway," he said, clapping my shoulder. I laughed, even though the words still hurt. With the money I saved, I bought a used pickup and a set of secondhand tools. I quit the diner and went full-time with a local HVAC company. It was honest work, hard work, and for the first time my days made sense. One summer afternoon, a coworker was accused of stealing cash from a client's kitchen. I saw the panic on his face, the same panic I'd lived with for years. Before the boss could fire him, I spoke up. "Check the vent," I said. They did. The envelope had been sucked halfway into the duct. Crisis over, reputation saved. That night, Andy called me. "You didn't just fix air," he said. "You fixed a mess. That's the difference." Years passed quietly. Work, sleep, repeat. Safe, predictable. Lonely in a way that didn't hurt as much as it used to. One night, I logged into an old social media account I'd sworn I'd never touch again. There they were, my family, smiling, standing around a birthday cake with my sister's daughter about 10 years old now. My mother holding her like she was the center of the universe. My father's arm around them proud. My brother grinning like he'd never spat at my feet. The caption read, "Family is everything." I closed the laptop and sat in the dark shaking. They hadn't fallen apart without me. They'd replaced me. That was the moment I knew I couldn't keep carrying a name they'd buried. I filed the paperwork for a legal name change the next morning. When the new ID arrived, Cindy Winter. I stared at it for a long time. The woman in the photo looked harder, stronger, like someone who'd learned how to survive alone. That was the day I stopped running from what they did to me and started building something they could never destroy. 10 years later, my life looked nothing like the one they destroyed. I owned Winter Heating and Air, a small but steady company with 2 vans, 3 employees, and a client list built entirely on trust. We weren't flashy. We didn't advertise much. But when someone's heat went out in the middle of winter or their air died during a heat wave, they called us and we showed up. Every invoice paid, every job done right, felt like another brick laid between me and the girl who slept in her car behind a gas station. Life had finally settled into something stable, quiet, safe. That was when the past cracked open again. I was behind a bakery one early summer afternoon, sweat running down my spine as I worked on an ancient air unit when my phone started buzzing nonstop in my pocket. Unknown number. Hometown area code. I ignored it twice. On the third call, something in my chest tightened, and I answered. "Winter Heating," I said. There was silence, then a voice I hadn't heard in a decade. "Cindy." The world went quiet. "Who's this?" I asked, even though I already knew. "It's Daniel." My hands went numb. The fan noise faded, the street sounds blurred. Daniel, my ex-boyfriend. The last person who ever said he believed me, before choosing everyone else anyway. "I know I shouldn't call," he said quickly, "but I thought you should hear this from someone who actually believes you now." My throat closed. "Hear what?" There was a pause. "Claire's been arrested." I leaned against the van. "For what?" "For lying," he said. "She accused another man. Same story. This time he fought back, got a lawyer. And during the investigation, she confessed. About everything. About you. The words didn't feel real. She admitted she lied. Back then, Daniel continued, his voice shaking. She said she got pregnant from a one-night stand and panicked. She blamed you because she knew everyone would believe her. My knees nearly gave out. They cleared your name, he said softly. Officially. I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I felt empty. Vindication, it turned out, didn't feel the way movies promised it would. I'm married now, Daniel added quietly. I have kids, but I never forgot what they did to you. I'm sorry it took this long. You were the only one who believed me, I said. That mattered. We said goodbye. I sat in that van for nearly an hour afterwards, staring at the steering wheel, waiting for something relief rage closure to show up. Nothing did. By the next morning, the calls started. Private numbers, emails, messages sent through my company website. Please call us back. We need to talk. We were wrong. Curiosity got the better of me once. I answered. Cindy, my mother said, her voice breaking. Don't hang up. Anne told the police everything. We didn't know. I hung up. They didn't know because they didn't want to know. A local newspaper reached out for a statement. I declined. I wasn't interested in being a headline. I'd lived 10 years as a villain in their story. I didn't need to be the tragic hero now. Instead, I wrote letters. Not apologies, not forgiveness. Truth. I wrote about sleeping in my car, about the moldy room above the diner, about Andy, the stranger who gave me shelter when my own family threw me away. I wrote about burning my old school ID because my last name made me sick, about seeing photos of them smiling around Claire and her child while I washed grease pans for scraps. I ended every letter the same way. You didn't believe me when I told the truth. Now you can live with it. I never mailed them. I stacked them in a shoebox, slid it into a desk drawer, and locked it. Truth had finally arrived, but it came 10 years too late. The first time my mother showed up, I didn't recognize her right away. I was in my office finishing paperwork when the bell over the front door chimed softly. I looked up expecting a client or one of my technicians coming back early from a job. Instead, there she was standing just inside the doorway, like she didn't know if she was allowed to exist in the room. She looked smaller than I remembered, older. The sharp confidence she used to wear like armor was gone. Gray threaded through her hair, and her hand shook as she held a casserole dish wrapped in foil. I made your favorite, she said quietly. Chicken and rice. The smell hit me before the memories did. My chest tightened despite myself. The last time she'd made that dish was the night before my life fell apart. I stood up slowly. Why are you here? Her eyes filled instantly. I just wanted to see you, to say I'm sorry. We were wrong. Wrong. Not we destroyed you, not we abandoned you. Just wrong. You didn't even ask me what happened, I said. My voice stayed calm, which surprised me. You didn't let me speak. You threw me out and told me never to call again. She stepped closer. I didn't know what to believe. Your father was so angry, and Claire was crying. I held up a hand. Stop. She froze. You made a choice, I said. All of you did. She looked at me like she wanted to argue, then seemed to realize she couldn't. Slowly, she set the casserole down on the counter. At least eat this, she whispered. Throw it away when you leave. Her face crumpled. She nodded, turned, and walked out without another word. When the door closed, I waited for something to hit me. Grief, rage, relief. Nothing did. 2 days later, my father showed up. I was returning from a service call when I saw him standing outside my office, leaning against his truck, like he belonged there. He smiled when he saw me, like we'd just had a misunderstanding instead of a decade-long erasure. You've done well for yourself, he said, looking around. Business looks good. I'm proud of you. Get to the point, I said. He sighed, irritated. Your mother's not doing well. She cries every day. I thought maybe we could all sit down, clear the air. I almost laughed. You punched me, I said evenly. You left me homeless. You told me I wasn't your daughter anymore. You cleared the air that night. I was angry, he snapped. Things looked bad. So you hit first and ask questions never. His jaw tightened. You don't have to keep holding on to hate. I'm not holding on to hate, I said, pulling out my phone. I'm holding on to self-respect. He frowned. What are you doing? I tapped the screen. Security. I've got someone trespassing at the front. His expression shifted from disbelief to fury. You're calling security on your own father. You're not my father, I said. You're a stranger who ruined my life. The guard from the neighboring building escorted him out minutes later. My father cursed the entire way, slammed his truck door, and sped off. After that, the stories started trickling in. Dad lost his job after yelling at a supervisor. Mom barely left the house. My brother's marriage cracked once his wife learned the truth about what they'd done. Their perfect image, the one they'd protected at my expense, was finally collapsing. One afternoon, my employee Kevin brought a small box into my office. This was outside the door, he said. Inside were dozens of letters, my old name written on every envelope in my mother's dramatic, shaky handwriting. I didn't open a single one. I carried the box into storage, set it on a high shelf, and walked away. That night alone in my office, I thought about forgiveness. How people talk about it like it's owed, like it's a cure-all. Forgiveness is easy when you weren't the one sleeping in your car, wondering why no one loved you enough to ask the truth. They didn't want me. They wanted relief. And I wasn't giving it to them. 3 months passed after my parents stopped trying to force their way back into my life. I thought that was the end of it. I thought the past had finally learned to stay where it belonged. Then the letter came. Plain white envelope. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Claire Williams requests to meet with you at Maple Ridge Correctional Facility. I stared at the name for a long time. It looked wrong, printed so neatly like it belonged to a stranger and not the girl who had stood in my parents' living room and pointed at me while my life burned down around us. I threw the letter away. Then I pulled it back out. Then I threw it away again. For 10 years, I'd imagined what I'd say to her if I ever saw her again. Sometimes I screamed at her in my head. Sometimes I said nothing at all. I didn't know which version of me would show up if I went. But I knew one thing: I didn't want her haunting me forever as an unfinished sentence. So a week later, I drove to the prison. It was 2 hours away, surrounded by flat land and silence, the kind of place meant to disappear people. The guard checked my ID, buzzed me through, and led me into a gray visiting room that smelled like disinfectant and old coffee, metal tables, plastic chairs, families whispering to people they still loved. I didn't belong there. Then Claire walked in. I barely recognized her. She was thinner, pale hair, pulled back too tight, her face lined with exhaustion. The girl who once cried in my mother's arms looked like someone who hadn't slept in years. She sat across from me and folded her hands together like she was afraid they'd shake apart. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. I didn't answer. "You look different," she tried. "Older." "You look guilty," I said. Her eyes filled instantly. "I deserve that." "No," I replied calmly. "You deserve worse." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I know. I'm sorry. For lying. For ruining your life. For everything." Why, I asked. My voice was steady, which surprised even me. Why me? She stared at the table. "Because you were safe to blame. You were quiet. You never fought back. I knew everyone would believe me." The words landed harder than any punch. "You panicked," I said. "So you destroyed my life." She sobbed. "I didn't think it would go that far." "But it did," I said. "I lost my family, my boyfriend, my name. I slept in my car behind a gas station while you were throwing baby showers." She wiped her face with her sleeve. "Vernon was the one who got me pregnant," she whispered. "He was a dealer. I told him and he disappeared. I was scared. I didn't know what to do." "So you chose me," I said, "because I was convenient." She nodded. I felt nothing. No rage, no satisfaction, just emptiness. "There's something else," she said, hesitating. "My daughter. They never told her the truth. She still thinks it was you." That hit harder than anything else. "She's 10 now," Claire whispered. "She asks about you sometimes. She's seen your old pictures. She wonders why you never come around." I stood up so fast my chair scraped across the floor. "You don't get to tell me that," I said quietly. "You don't get to hand me that guilt like it's mine to fix." She reached out, trembling. "I'm sorry, Cindy. I really am. You took 10 years from me," I said. "I hope you never sleep peacefully again." She broke down completely. I leaned in just enough for her to hear me. "You deserve it." Then I walked out. Driving away from that place, I waited for relief, for closure, for some dramatic sense of victory. It never came, but something else did. Exhaustion. And with it, finality. Some things don't heal when the truth finally comes out. Some things just end. A year passed after I walked out of Maple Ridge Correctional Facility, and for the first time since I was 17, my life stopped feeling like it was bracing for the next impact. I sold my old house, the one I'd bought quickly when my business first took off, more practical than personal, and moved just outside the city. The new place wasn't extravagant. 3 bedrooms, a fenced yard, a quiet street where no one knew my last name or my history. Every wall, every nail, every square foot belonged to me, because I earned it. No one could take it away with a lie. And then there was Evan. I met him through work. He was managing a renovation project for one of my commercial clients, and we ended up talking longer than necessary after a late inspection. He didn't ask probing questions, didn't push. When I eventually told him pieces of my past, he just listened, nodded once, and said, "Whatever they did to you doesn't get to define you now." We moved slowly, carefully. He moved in with his dog. I learned what it felt like to come home to a house that waited for me instead of judging me. It wasn't fireworks. It was peace. And that was better. The lawsuit came together quietly. The second man Claire had accused reached out to me through a lawyer. He was filing a civil case for defamation and emotional damages and wanted my testimony. I didn't hesitate. For once, I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't afraid of being seen. I sat in that courtroom and told the truth calmly, steadily, without anger. I didn't look at my parents when I spoke. I didn't need to. The facts stood on their own. The pattern, the lies, the damage. When the judge ruled in our favor, there was no applause, no celebration, just silence. But it was a clean silence. Walking out of that courthouse, my name wasn't stained anymore. Not officially, not legally. It stood next to words like vindicated and credible, and somehow that mattered, even if it came too late to give me back what I'd lost. A few weeks later, my phone buzzed late at night. Unknown number, hometown area code. I listened to the voicemail once. My father's voice sounded small, sick, apologetic in the way people get when they're running out of time. Stage 4 cancer. He said he didn't want anything, just to see me once, just to why he was sorry. I deleted it. Not out of spite, not out of revenge. Out of truth. He made his choice when he hit me instead of asking me a question, when he watched me bleed on the porch and nodded at the police, when he told me I wasn't his daughter anymore. That was the version of reality he chose to live in. I chose mine. That night, I stood in my workshop long after everyone else had gone home. I looked around at the tools, the vans, the company name, painted clean and bold on the wall. Everything there existed because I refused to disappear, because I kept going when no one came to save me. They erased me once, but I rewrote myself. And this time, my story didn't end with forgiveness or reconciliation or dramatic reunions. It ended quietly, steadily, on my own terms. I wasn't erased anymore. I was finished.